Hey there! In this tutorial we will create a stunning 3D rotating slider using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Let me show you exactly what we are going to create. As you can see, I have already created a project folder that contains an index.html file and a folder named Assets. Inside the Assets folder, there is a CSS folder with a style.css file, an img folder containing the images we will use in this project, and a JS folder that holds a main.js file. Now open the index.html file. First, we will link our CSS file. Next, we will add an icon library. Open a browser. Search for Remix icon. Then click on the GitHub icon. Scroll down to find and copy the CDN link. And paste it here. After that, we will add a font library, and the one we will use is Font Share. Now search for the Clash Display font. Then click on its Styles link. Once there, select the font weights you'd like to use. Afterward, click on Style Selected and then Use. Finally, click on Proceed. Copy the link. And paste it here. Finally, we will link our JavaScript file. Now, let's create the nav bar. For that, create a header tag with a class of header. After that, add a nav tag with a class of nav. Inside the nav, we will add 3 child elements. The first will contain this logo, the second will hold these links, and the third will contain these icons. Let's go ahead and add the logo. For the logo, let's create an anchor tag with a class of nav logo. And the logo text will be fruity. After that, create a div tag with a class of nav menu. Inside the nav menu, we will add these links and a close icon, which will be visible on small screens. Let me show you. This one. Now let's add links first. For that, create an unordered list with a class of navList. Then add li tag with a class of navitem. Now create an anchor tag with a class of navlink. After that, copy the nav item and paste it 4 times. Then add text to each nav link. First will be Shop. Second will be About. Third will be Careers. Fourth will be Partnership. And fifth will be Contact. Now after the nav list, create a div tag with a class of nav close. Then here we will add a close icon. For icon, let's go back to Remix icon and search for close. Click on the icon, copy it, and paste it here. Now after the nav menu, create a div tag with a class of nav actions, which will be our third child element. Now let's add our first icon, which will be RI user line. Second icon will be RI shopping cart line. At the end, create a div tag with a class of nav toggle. Now let's add an icon here. An icon will be RI menu line. This will be visible on small screens. Let me show you. This one. Now let's move to the CSS file. Here, I have already created CSS variables. First, we have variables for colors. The benefit of using these variables is that if you want to change a color later, you don't need to go through the entire CSS file to update it everywhere it's used. Instead, you can change it here, and it will automatically update throughout the website. Next, we have a variable for font family. You will find this value here. I have also created variables for font sizes. The benefit of storing font sizes in variables is that when we make the website responsive, we won't need to search for selectors to change their values. Instead, we can simply change the values of these variables. Similarly, we have variables for font weights. Then we have some base styling. We have a universal selector where we set margin and padding to 0 to remove default spacing from all elements. This way, unwanted gaps are eliminated. Then, we set box sizing to border box to ensure padding and borders are included within an element's total width and height. Next, we have defined some styling in the body selector that will apply to all the elements. After that, we set list style to none to remove the default bullet points. Then we set text decoration to none for all the anchor tags to remove the default underline. At the end, we set a max width of 100% for all the images to ensure they scale responsively within their container. Now select the header class. First, we will give it a background color. After that, set its position to fixed so it stays in place while scrolling. Then set top to 0. Left to 0 as well. After applying position fixed, you can see that it doesn't occupy 100% of the viewport width. Now go ahead and set width to 100%. And finally, we will set z-index to 1000 to ensure it stays on top of everything. Next, we will align the logo, links, and icons in a row. But first, change header background color to transparent. Now, select the nav class. Then, set display to flex to align them in a row. To align the links and icons in a row, we will use same property, so also select the nav list and nav action classes here. After that, select the nav class again. First, give it a background color. Then set height to 5.5 rem. After that, set max width to 1568 pixels to slightly reduce the navbar's width. To center the navbar horizontally, set margin inline to auto. Now set padding inline to 1 rem to add some space on the left and right. Now remove the background color and set align items to center to align them vertically. Then, set justify content to space between. Now select the nav logo class. First, change its color to white color. After that, set font size to H1 font size. And finally, set font weight to font bold. Now select the nav list class. And set column gap to 3.5 rem to add some space between the links. After that, select the nav link class and change its color to black color. Next, select the class nav actions. Then first we will set font size to H2 font size. After that, set column gap to 1 rem. After that, select the nav toggle class and also select the nav close class. Then, set display to none because we don't need them on large screens. Now, remove this background property. Now, inside the main tag, create a section tag with the class Home. Inside the Home, we will create a slider using Swiper.js. For that, open a browser and search for Swiper. Now click on Get Started. Scroll down. Copy these links one by one and paste them into your HTML file to link Swiper. Then click on Demos to view examples. Here, several types of sliders are available. For now, go with the default slider and click on Core. Here, you can see that to create a slider, the first step is to add a container element with the Swiper class. Then, we have to create a container element with the Swiper wrapper class. Inside the Swiper wrapper, we can create our slides, but each slide must have the Swiper slide class. Let's go back to our HTML file. Then here, create a div tag with the Swiper class, and also give it the class firstSwiper. Inside the Swiper, create a div tag with the class Swiper wrapper. Inside the Swiper wrapper, we will create our slides. For now, let's add the first slide. Create a div tag with the class Swiper slide and also give it the class Home Data. Now inside the Home Data, we will add h1 tag with the class Home Title. After that, copy the Home Data and paste it twice. Now add text to each title. First will be pear. Second will be apple. And third will be exotic. Now copy this JavaScript code and paste it into the main.js file. Then, change it to First Swiper. Copy the First Swiper class and paste it here. Since we need an infinite loop, so come over here. Scroll down and click on Infinite Loop. Then click on Core. To enable the infinite loop feature, we need to set the loop option to true. After that, set the speed to 1 second. To enable the autoplay feature, go back to Swiper and search for autoplay. Now click on Core. Copy the autoplay option. And paste it here. You can change the delay value, but I think 2.5 seconds is enough. And if you don't want the slide to move on interaction, set Disable on Interaction to True. Now let's move to the CSS file and select the home class. First, give it a minimum height of 100 dvh. Then, set height to 900 pixels. After that, select the class Home Data and set its background color to background color variable. Now let's create the background color variable. Since each slide will have a different background, we will define this variable using inline CSS for each slide. Here, first we need to add the style attribute. The variable name will be background color. And its value will be HSL, 79, 66%, 72%. Now copy the style attribute and add it to the other slides. Then, change the values for each of the slides. Here you can see that the slides are not taking 100% of the height, so come over here. And select the class Swiper. Then set its height to 100%. Now let's style the title. For that, select the Home Title class. First, change its color to white color. Then, we will set font size using the clamp function. To generate the value, open a browser and search for Clamp Generator. Here, we have to set the minimum viewport width. Once this viewport is reached, the font size will stop shrinking. Next, we need to set the maximum viewport width. When the screen size becomes larger than this, the font size will remain fixed. Now give the minimum font size value in rem. And also provide the maximum font size value in rem. Copy this line of code. And paste it here. After that, set its font weight to font semi-bold. Now let's position the title. For that, set its position to absolute. Then, set top to 50%. Left will be also 50%. And finally, set transform to translate -50% and -50%. Since we need the title slightly above, by using the calc function, subtract 4.25 rem from the top value. Next, we will create this sliding can. Now let's go back to the HTML file. And after the home swiper, create a div tag with the class home mockup. Now let's move to the CSS file. And select the class home mockup. First, set seed index to 100. Then, set position to absolute. Now copy these properties and paste them here. And this value will be 2.25 rem. Then, we will set width using the clamp function. After that, give it an aspect ratio of 45:83. Now set the background image with the can as the first image. Note that I declare the background, not the background image. Then set background size to auto at 100%. Now come over here and set the position to relative for home so that the mockup can position itself relative to home. Now insert the labels image in front of the can image. Let's take a look at the changes. Now go back to the CSS file. And set background blend mode to multiply. Now we will erase this outer area. For that, we will use Mask Image property, and here we will insert Can Image. Then, set its size to auto 100%. And mask repeat will be no repeat. Now let's create this rotation effect. If we take a look at our image, it is visible only up to this point, and the remaining part is outside the element width, so we can't see it. So we need to move it to the left by a certain distance to see the remaining part of the image. As you may know, there are two properties in the background that represent the left and top distances of the image from the element. The default value is 0, so if we change these values, the position of the image will also change. Now let's set the left value to 50% and see the changes. Now let's create a variable named left and set its value to 0. And we will use this variable here. Now let's move to the JavaScript file to change its value dynamically. So here, on the slide change event, we run a function. Here first we will get the real index of the slide and store it in the slide index variable. Then we will create a variable named left. Now, we will multiply the slide index by 50. That means if the slide index is 0, the left value will be 0. If the slide index is 1, the left value will be 50, meaning the image will move 50% to the left. After that, create a variable named mockup_image, and using the document.getElementById method, get the element with the ID home mockup. Now let's add this ID in the HTML. Now let's set the left value. Note that we set the value in percentage. Let's add a transition to the background property for smoothness. But here, you can see that the image part on the first slide is not looking balanced from the sides. So come over here and create a variable named isAtFirstSlide. Here, we will check if the slide index is 0. If it's true, we will set the left value to 0.25, otherwise we will multiply the slide index by 50. Next, we will create this fruit slider, which will be controlled by the first one. Now, copy the first slider and paste it here. First, change its class name to Second Swiper. Then change home data to HomeFruit. Now remove the title and add an image with the class HomeFruit image. And inside the source attribute, we will add our image path. Now copy this slide and replace the other slides with it. Now go back to Swiper and look for vertical. Then click on Core. Next, copy this JavaScript code and paste it into the main.js file. We don't need pagination, so remove it. And set loop to true. Then change its class to Second Swiper. And it's named a Second Swiper as well. Now, to control it using the first swiper, set first swiper .controller. .control. To second swiper. Now let's move to the CSS file and select the class second swiper. First, change its position to absolute. Then, set inset to 0. Inset is the shorthand for top, right, bottom, and left. After that, set pointer events to none. Next, select the class HomeFruit image and set its width to 100%. Now copy these properties and paste them here. Here, the top value will be 50%. Now let's move to the next step, which is to create this button. For that, create an anchor tag with the class Home button. And the text will be Shop Taste. Now let's style it. First, let's position it. For that, set its position to absolute. Then set bottom to 1 rem. And left to 50%. To center it horizontally, we also need to set transform to translate x negative 50%. After that, set its background color to white color. Then, give it a padding of 1.25 rem for the top and bottom, and 2.25 rem for the left and right. After that, set border radius to 2 rem. Then change its color to black color. Now set its font weight to font semi-bold. And finally set z-index to 100. Actually, we have to perform addition here. Now let's add a background color to the header when we scroll down. For that, define a function named scrollHeader. Then, inside the function, create a variable named header. To store the header element by using the document.getElementById method. Now, let's add this ID in the HTML. Now, we will check if the scroll position is greater than or equal to 50. If it is, we will add the class BG header to the header element. If it's less than 50, we will remove the BG header class Now, let's add a scroll event listener to the window. And trigger the scroll header function when scrolling occurs. Now, let's check if it's working or not. Let's style this class. So come here. And select the BG header class. Now change its background color to white color. We also need to change the color of logo. Now, let's add a transition to the background with a duration of 0.3 seconds. Also add a transition to the logo color with a duration of 0.3 seconds. If you notice that the height of the home section is too much, instead of changing it through media queries for different screen sizes, we will set it using JavaScript. For that, create a function named homeHeight. Then, inside the function, create a variable named home to store the element with the ID home by using the document.getElementById method. Now, let's add this ID in the HTML. After that, create another variable named mockup to store the element with the ID home mockup. Now, what we are going to do is set the height of the home section to the height of the mockup and add an extra 313 pixels. This way, when the height of the mockup reduces, the height of the home section will also reduce. Now let's set the height of the home section. After that, let's add a load event listener to the window. and trigger the home height function. Now remove the height property from the home section. If you want to update the height when we resize the window, trigger the function on the Resize Event Listener as well. Now, let's make it responsive. Now let's create a display menu that appears on click. First, create a variable named navMenu to store the element with the ID navMenu by using the document.getElementById method. Then create another variable named navToggle to store the element with the ID navToggle. After that, create a variable named navClose to store the element with the ID navClose. Now let's add these IDs in the HTML. When the navToggle element is clicked, we run a function that adds the showMenu class to the navMenu element. Now, let's check if it's working or not. We will remove this class when the navClose element is clicked. Now let's set right to 0 in the showMenu class to make the menu visible. Initially, we set right to -100% in the nav menu to hide it off screen. Let's add a transition to the right property for smoothness. Let's add an animation to the title and fruit image when the page loads using GSAP. Now search for GSAP. Click on Get GSAP. Then click on CDN. Copy this link and paste it in your HTML file. Now let's add the Home Title Animate class to the first slide title, and we will target this class using GSAP for the animation. Also add the HomeFruitAnimate class to the first fruit image. This method animates an element from a specified state to its current state. Here, you have to define the element to which the animation will apply. Then here, first set x to 1000. Next, set the duration to 1 second. And finally, set the easing to power 1 dot in. Now copy and paste it. Here, the target element will be the one that contains the class HomeFruitAnimate. Then change x to y.